Today I'm going to be installing coilovers on my 2017 Subaru Legacy. And of course, first thing is jack your car up, make sure it's safe. And part of that safety, and also something that's going to help you out, is put a jack stand underneath the suspension just to keep it from falling, because as soon as you start breaking everything loose, it will fall. Next thing is I went ahead and sprayed a bunch of WD-40 on the big bolts holding on the caliper and the whole braking system, and also what connects to your strut. And mine were so stinking tight that I actually had to use a breaker bar to break them over. And as soon as you break those over, it's pretty easy to take your standard ratchet and make sure that you have something to back it off. And I just used a standard crescent wrench or adjustable wrench, and made sure I backed that off. And here I am right here trying to get those out, and the top bolt on my car is actually bigger than the smaller bolt, so you won't get those mixed up. And I actually have a washer on one side on my top bolt, holding it all together. Next thing is release, if I'm sure yours has it, but release the brake line bolt here. It's really easy to get off. You shouldn't need to spray it with WD-40 or anything like that. It should easily come off, and just kind of pull it away from the whole strut system. The next thing is you've actually got the cord running to your car that actually calculates your speedometer. Don't really know what the technical term is for that. If you do, go ahead and comment what that is, because I would love to know what that is. Of course, I could go on ChatGPT or Google to look that up, but I'd like to get some interaction from y'all, because I need some educating on that. Of course, I'm just this guy in my garage trying to get it all fixed up. But anyways, it was 4 prongs on that thing, and I just kind of squeezed them together. And of course, that's that big bolt, kind of pushed it through. The next thing and the last thing, which will also be the last thing that you do, is when you put it on, is get the sway bar link off. And that's what I'm doing here now. Of course, I've got to use some leverage. I also sprayed it with some WD-40 because that thing was on there pretty stinking tight. And after I broke it loose, pretty easy to use your socket wrench and get it off of there. So at this point, everything's loosened up, everything's pulled away, everything's good to go. Don't really see any issues. I think I can get it off. Now go to the top part right here and loosen everything up that's holding it into place, and just use my standard wrench. And actually, I'm going to include a picture on how this is supposed to look, because when I did do it, I realized I did it wrong. I had to take it all apart again, and really just had to drop the suspension down to fix it, because the struts that I got, or the coilovers I got, give you a little bit of camber. It gives you an adjustment. So, and pulling this thing out doesn't look that heavy, right? It's actually pretty stout, so especially if you're trying to get out of it with one hand. Next thing I'm doing is spraying WD-40 on the mount part there, so it'll easily slide into the new coilover. Here I am going to use a bungee cord that I'm going to run up through there just to kind of hold everything in place, because you don't want to put a lot of strain on your brake line while you're getting your coilover and going to put it in there. So here I am just kind of putting it in there, and then I'll release that bungee cord here in a second. Yeah, so that assembly is kind of heavy too, and kind of awkward to move around. And of course, you can see my gray hair there. So I've already taken the bungee cord out. It's gone. So now I lifted up through there, and I reached up there to the top and kind of got each nut started on the top of that coilover. And then now I've got everything lined up. And the top bolt wasn't hard to do. Of course, that's the bigger one, so you kind of want to make sure that that's in there. And of course, this could be different cars, have different size bolts. It could be bigger, smaller, it could be the same. So the bottom one's the one I had the biggest problems with, and it just slightly didn't line up. It wasn't 100% perfect, but I did finally get it all lined up and everything, and got it all torqued down with the socket wrench, and also backed it up with the the crescent when I use my impact. If you don't have an impact, I highly recommend you get an impact, and I even keep it in my car in case I have a flat, real easy to change. After everything's locked into place down low, now what I'm going to do is make sure everything's locked in tight up top. And of course, I'm going to include a picture on what it's supposed to look like, because like I said, if you can look, or if you can see right here, I've got the adjustments, and they're kind of going towards the front of the car, towards also maybe like the back of the car here. What it's supposed to do is the slits that are in it, you're supposed to be able to adjust it for the camber in and out. I'm doing this late at night, and not an excuse, I should have paid more attention, but the only time I got to work on the car is later at night. I'm doing this all in my shop, in my garage. So then everything is mounted up and everything's tight. Now there's a little adjustment here. You can just spin it around to get it matched up to where you want your sway bar to go into. And what I did is get it to where it's roughly kind of hard to get into, because I wanted it as stout as I could. And after I get it all stout, you take your lock, you rotate it all the way down, and then when you get coilovers, you'll have two sets of keys, and the bigger set is for the top part where the actual spring is. And I've got another video to show how to set your preload, so you should have already done all your preloading at this point. If you haven't, go look at that video. Really simple to do. And then right here, I'm just taking that key and making sure that it's really tight, because you don't want this bouncing around, because then you have your sway bar every time you take some turns or you do some spirited driving, it's going to loosen everything up. So you want to make sure that is really tight and do the best you can to make it as tight as possible. And I take my impact and give it a couple rounds of that. Not too hard, just enough to make sure that I know that it's really tight. It's not going to go anywhere. And then here I am putting the brake line back on this part, making sure that it's all secure, make sure it's tight. You don't need to torque this down a ton, just enough, hand tight. And of course, make sure you don't forget about that jack stand. You don't want to lower your car with that jack stand underneath it, then you just have to jack it back up. And put your wheel back on, and then if you've got that impact, it'll make it real easy. And before you know it, you'll just have your wheel right on. Of course, I've sped this up and skipped it, so look, it's already done. And then just drop it, make sure you don't hear any loud clanks or bumps, and you're done. And you've installed your coilovers.